When I got the Adam Schefter notification that Josh Reynolds is signing a 2-year contract worth up to $14 million, I stopped reading and thought, what team overpaid Josh Reynolds that much? And then I saw it was the Denver Broncos. So, Broncos signing Josh Reynolds, wide receiver from the Lions, on a 2-year deal worth up to $14 million. I'm sure there's a lot of incentives in there, so don't look at that $14 million and think, wow, that's a big chunk of change for a guy that didn't produce a ton last year. But to me, I looked at this as they've just signed another Courtland Sutton in terms of similar play style. And I'm not sure if that really advances the offense very much after losing a speedy, twitchy guy in Jerry Jeudy to the trade with the Cleveland Browns. So I'm not personally all that jazzed up about this signing. The money is sure maybe a little bit on the higher end, but I'm sure there's a lot of incentives in there, and ultimately that's sort of just the name of the game when it comes to free agency. And then I looked at other guys that signed contracts in a similar boat to Reynolds, and I don't think he's in a very different tier than them. But over the last 4 seasons, he comes off a pretty solid year with the Lions. Not quite career highs, but 40 grabs, 608 yards. A big play down the field threat for them, 15.2 yards a reception, and 5 touchdowns to go along with it. I am 90% confident that Josh Reynolds was the guy against the Niners in the NFC Championship game with a very untimely drop. So that's not awesome, but hey, everyone gets a case of the drops from time to time. Doesn't mean you can't shake it after a season or two. But the former 4th-round pick out of A&M started his career off with the Rams. Didn't really stick there for very long. Went to the Titans. He was cut midseason by Tennessee, and he joined the Detroit Lions midseason back in 2021. And Pro Football Focus ranked him 50th out of 128 qualifying wide receivers last year. And I'm not super stoked about this signing because I just don't think Josh Reynolds, I'm sorry if he's watching this right now, is going to move the needle all that much for you offensively. But then I got to remind myself, and I probably got to remind you guys as well, this is a rebuilding offseason. This is not a team that was going to go out and spend a lot of money. So I'm even a little surprised they spent up to $14 million on Josh Reynolds to begin with. But you know that, well, Sean Payton's always got the itch to make some moves in the offseason. And the ownership group is always happy to spend money. So when you got those 2 boxes checked, it's probably going to result in another signing here or there. So Josh Reynolds coming over from Detroit. We're going to break down the signing in more detail. But this is why you subscribe to the channel. Because when signings happen, no other Broncos YouTube channel is getting a video out to you as quickly as we are. So make sure you go down and hit that sub button today. That way, as more signings come in throughout the offseason and whatnot, you are in the loop. But let me know what you think of the Josh Reynolds signing. How would you grade it? A, B, C, D, or F? He was the Lions' number 2 last year, I would say, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. Him and Jameson Williams kind of battle for that number 2 spot, but more often than not, it did belong to Reynolds, especially towards the playoff stretch. I was looking at snap counts. He kind of had a bit of a up and down roller coaster snap percentage throughout the 2023 season, with it being really high and then going kind of low and then picking right back up again as they got into the playoffs. For me, I'll give it a C grade. C is average, and I think this is an average signing, right? Reynolds comes off a 600-yard season, and in Denver, maybe he has 600 to 700 yards. And to me, that's a pretty average season for a team's number 2 receiver. If he gets 700 yards as a team's clear-cut number 3 behind Sutton and Mims, then I'll bump it up to a B to a B-plus grade. But that remains to be seen if you can get that type of targets and snaps with the number 3 spot currently on the depth chart behind Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims. And I think with Tim Patrick missing the last 2 years, Reynolds getting that kind of contract probably gives him the slight edge in terms of where the coaching staff views him on their depth chart, with Patrick not having the best reliability skills, unfortunately, because of the injuries. There's a good chance that Sean Payton and crew kind of prepare for life without Tim Patrick, and whatever they get for him will kind of feel like house money. All right, we got more to share on this, by the way, but really quickly, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor today, which is Game Time. Opening day for almost everyone but the Padres and the Dodgers is tomorrow, and I've already got my tickets for opening day thanks to Game Time. So So not only do we have baseball now, but we have playoff basketball heating up along with hockey and, of course, March Madness. And you should not have to miss any of the action because of ticket prices. With Game Time, you can get killer last-minute deals and all-in prices for all the big events. I love that Game Time gives you a bird's-eye view of your seat before you purchase your ticket. That way you don't show up and there's some big surprise about, I didn't realize we were this far up in the nosebleeds, or a giant pole was sitting right in front of us. And another great element of Game Time is you can get all-in prices. There's nothing worse than going through the entire process of finding tickets, going to the checkout, and the price basically doubled because of all the fees and taxes. With Game Time, you can actually see what the all-in price is before you go down that rabbit hole. So download the Game Time app and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. Once again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. That's CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, where does Josh Reynolds fit in amongst the other free agent signings? Well, P.J. Locke, he came back on a 2-year deal. Brandon Jones has been their biggest signing so far coming over from Miami. They brought back Will Lutz. They brought back Michael Burton. We had a reunion with Malcolm Roach and Sean Payton to beef up the defensive line. Lil Jordan Humphrey, Adam Trotman also returning to Denver. Cody Barton will fill in for Josie Jewell, who left for the Carolina Panthers in free agency. Justin Stranad, one of 2 players to flip during free agency, ultimately deciding to stay with Denver instead of going to the Panthers. They brought in Matt Peart to be the swing tackle behind Mike McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles. And now we've got Josh Reynolds getting the second biggest contract, once again, worth up to $14 million. My guess is this is a 1-year, $7 million contract. Very little guaranteed for 2025, and a lot of incentives to get up to $14 million. This does ease a slight draft need for Denver. All eyes are on the quarterback position, and understandably so. But after that, we won't use that one, Jack. There is a slight need for the Broncos at the wide receiver spot because move on from Jerry Jeudy. Courtland Sutton, the style of receiver he is, it doesn't age super well, right? He's not one of the best separators in this game. He relies on his brute strength and his ability to win jump balls. And if the speed starts to go, I think he might be on an Allen Robinson career path. So if you're not going to tackle wide receiver relatively early in the draft because you want to go quarterback or defensive line, pass rusher, cornerback, well, all of a sudden you bump down wide receiver till day 3 of the draft, and it's hard to find proven talent at that spot, right? Which means big season for Marvin Mims has to be on the horizon. Because let's just say Denver puts a pin in wide receiver. And they're like, we're not going to make it a priority in the draft. We're not going to go after a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds. We'll wait till one of our 5th-round picks to do that. Okay. Well, let's say Denver finds themselves in a similar spot next offseason, needing to get a quarterback because Jarrett Stidham didn't work out and maybe Bo Nix in day 2 of the draft proved he is not the guy. Well, now you got to go out and get a quarterback. Courtland Sutton is 1 year older. If Marvin Mims doesn't really break out this year, you have questions surrounding him at that spot. Tim Patrick is on a 1-year deal. You got Josh Reynolds on a 2-year contract. He'd be like the only returning receiver if you hold on to Sutton if he does not continue to play the way he does with that big cap hit coming up. So if Marvin Mims does not have a great year, I don't want to put the pressure on him, but you are going to make a big problem for yourself in the next offseason where now you need a quarterback and a wide receiver. And so many times we have seen teams go get a quarterback, not really fill out the receiver spot, and then the quarterback sinks when they get to the NFL. So will Marvin Mims break out this year? I want to get your thoughts and your opinion down below in the comments section. I think this is a big year for Mims. The 2nd-round pick out of Oklahoma showed some good flashes last year. He had a really nice start to the year. Awesome special teams abilities. And with the new NFL rule change, I think that's really going to benefit players like Marvin Mims who can leave a bigger footprint on every single game. but we need to see a big step forward from him in the receiving department. That way, if Denver is going to get after a quarterback in 2025, that quarterback is stepping into a good-ish situation with having a rising receiver like Marvin Mims. That will do it for us on this edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I always appreciate people who take time out of their day to watch our content. And if you're still watching right now, scroll on down and type DEN for me.